I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for the evening, Dr. Samson Gandhi. Dr. Samson Gandhi had a successful career in marketing and exports and imports of garments and textiles for over 10 years. Responding to God's call, he left his lucrative career in business in 1993 and served Haggai Institute in India as its finance and administration manager. With a clear vision from the Lord in 1997, he successfully launched Person to Person, an institute for Christian counseling to train biblical counselors for the church. He serves as its executive director. He is a sought-after international speaker on leadership and Christian counseling. He is also a visiting faculty of pastoral theology and counseling at SIAX, Bangalore, and IBCNS, Kumbanad, Kerala. Dr. Samson has contributed to many articles on counseling in national magazines and international journals as well. He has co-authored a book titled Shelters on the Highway and also authored a book named Counseling Without Offense. We're truly glad to have you here, Afi. Over to you, Afi. You can take over now.
Thank you, Nivi, for those kind words of introduction, and Ruth for really doing that introduction, ice-breaking so gracefully and so wonderfully. Thank you, friends, for all of you who have shared and who have been silently participating. A warm welcome to this evening's conversation. As the Lighthouse group has said, let's have a conversation on this important, a sensitive and delicate topic called suicide. Now, I say this as a delicate topic and a very sensitive topic because it touches our emotional chords. It probably reminds us of the times when we have considered suicide, probably reminds us of loved ones who have attempted suicide or even successfully committed suicide. Sad to say, but these things must come to our hearts and minds when we raise the subject of suicide. Added to the pain of suicide, it also leaves a big stigma in the lives of the people who are left behind. So all around, there is pain, there is trauma, and there is a lot of stigma. However, we will do well to take this on with courage and strength, rather than wish it away, deny it exists, or that we pray and forget it. A forum like this is a wonderful place for us to be able to listen in, contribute, talk, and share, so that we go away with something meaningful in order to address this malice in our community, in our society, and should it occur even in our personal lives. So I just want to quickly share, because I have a very short time of less than half an hour, to be able to present this topic and then throw it open for Q&A and discussion. So I have this PPT to share with you, but PPT is just an aside. I want you to converse. I want you to raise your hand, type in a question. At any time, feel free. You don't have to wait till the end. So we are looking at definition.
2 plus 1 क्या है?
What is suicide? What is suicide? That is one aspect. We are looking at what are the causes of suicide, myths, and some interventions. How do we help people who are considering, contemplating, thinking, attempting suicide? So let's start with myths. Myths related to suicide. People who talk about killing themselves never do. In fact, research has shown that those who talk about suicide actually go on to attempt. And when we do not take them seriously, we are the losers. And of course, they who commit suicide will lose their life. And yes, it is not a myth that people who talk about killing themselves never do, but they do commit suicide. All persons who attempt suicide are fully intended on dying. No. That means those who commit suicide, not necessary that they're actually thinking of completely successfully killing themselves and ending their lives. No. Very few are determined. As you will see later, their attempt at suicide is for quite a few other reasons as well. Only a psychotic, crazy person can actually go through with suicide. Far from the truth. Even, that is, in addition to people who are psychologically seriously ill, even normal people do. Right? Normal people who go through painful situations can also attempt suicide. Suicide is inherited or runs in the family. Well, it could happen in some families. There is no clear evidence that it is either genetic or biological. No, it doesn't carry, so we are not caught in a trap because it runs in the family. There's nothing like that. It could happen. It's more of probably a cause of depression that could run in the family. Suicide is a rich man's disease, or suicide is a poor women's, way out. No, it happens to all, rich, middle class, and poor. There is no clear evidence that it is only happens with rich people. Every true succeeded leaves a suicidal note. That means every person who has succeeded at committing suicide, the myth is they leave a suicide note. Not necessarily. When we read some of the stories in the media, we see that police have not found a suicide note. Only about 25% do. So in other words, they're not necessarily leaving a note either to condemn a person, hold somebody responsible. It's just that they just want to escape this painful reality and get away from this world without even leaving a note, right? You should never talk about suicide to a depressed person. You could give him or her ideas. Not at all true. Talking decreases the risk, and especially people who sense it, notice it, must draw such people into conversation and enable them to come out of it and seek appropriate help. And these and few other myths could be there. But then there was a beautiful slogan when we were talking about HIV and AIDS. Let's break the silence. And I think today we need to probably apply a similar slogan and said, never be silent about suicide. Talk. Never be silent about suicide. No, never hide any of those thoughts and feelings about suicide. Bring them to the fore, bring them to the surface and talk. So what is suicide? Schneidman, he says, it's a conscious act of self-induced annihilation, best understood as a multidimensional malice in a needful individual who defines an issue for which the suicide is perceived as the best solution. Quite technical. Let's break it up. First and foremost, it's a conscious act. People sometimes think, oh, he may not have known what he was doing. Like, for example, going onto the top of a tall building and jumping. He or she may not have known what he or she is doing. No, it is a conscious act. They contemplate pain, they contemplate what they are doing, what could it would do to the family, etc. It's a conscious act. Number two, it is self-induced. That is, nobody is pushing them to do it. Now, I know there are people who say we hear voices asking us to end our lives. Now, that is a psychological disease. Many times it is misunderstood as being possessed with evil spirits, not necessarily. It's debatable, but evidence is very, very high, leaning towards a psychological disease, right? Self-induced death. So I do that because I want to do it. I want to cut myself. I want to hang myself. I want to jump in front of the train, etc., etc., etc. It's self-induced. So nobody is actually making that person, oh, it's not his fault. It is not her fault. No, not necessarily. We are not talking about fault, putting a blame, but who is actually taking one's life? Themselves. It's a multi-dimensional dissatisfaction. In other words, it's not that one factor that makes people commit suicide. Let's say a farmer, he loses his crop. It is not just the financial loss. Perhaps he's also thinking about getting his daughter married. Probably he is to buy some farm equipment. None of this is possible. And he is to face people in the village square, and he cannot do it. All of these come together and he commits suicide. It's a multi-dimensional satisfaction. Likewise, in the young person's life, it could be facing friends, it could be facing parents, it could be cutting a sorry figure in front of the church, a multi-dimensional dissatisfaction, and that could lead to suicide. And it is happening in a needful individual. In other words, sometimes it's possible that why a person is committing suicide, that is, I got, let's say, I got 90%, and my mom expected 96% in academics. Now, for that person, that 6% is a needful, it's a need that has driven that child to suicide. You and I might say, well, what is wrong with that 6%? I'm happy with 90%. I am not a needful individual in that kind of a context. And I cannot say, why did that person commit suicide? What's so, why is she so crazy? No, for her, that 6% is needfulness. So it's a needful individual who's committing suicide. And it is about an issue. Surely there is a triggering issue. There is a, issues, sub issues coming together, as I said earlier, everything tumbling over. It must be things that have been being built up, simmering for quite some time. And one issue is like a tipping point, a domino effect that has come at that particular moment, and the person has committed suicide. So death perceived as the best or the only answer. There's no other remedy for it. There's no point. Nobody cares for me. Nobody is there to help me. No change can happen. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. The only answer is death. That's how a person thinks and commits suicide. A lot of factors happen. It is not must and should that all of them should be there in every case of suicide, but by and large, these are the essentials that are there in an act of suicide. All right. So feel free to, raise your hand or chat and then ask a question. Feel free. Right. Now, suicide is a desperate cry for help. Like I said earlier, not everybody when they commit suicide, want to end their life. What is the hidden reason? What is the underlying motivation? One is suicide is a desperate cry for help. 78% of suicide survivors attempt to die was a cry for help. That is, I have problems. Somebody take notice of it. Like, say, for example, a lot of youngsters cut their wrists or harm themselves in some way and end up in a hospital for simple. I mean, they don't want to die, they didn't want to die, and it is an attempt to get attention and said, I have problems. There is a lot of pain within me, and somebody take notice of it and help me. Completers, that means those who have actually completed suicide and were successful versus survivors, the ratio is ranging between 1:10 and 1:20, depending on the age, background, and other things. So, in other words, if one person was successful at taking their lives, 10 did not become successful. They went on to live by getting medical attention, and they were basically looking for attention and help, and they just getting attention step when they attempted suicide. 53% to 67% of general population seriously consider suicide. Now, here I just want to pause for a moment. General population we are talking about, where people go through negative life situations, where people experience a lot of guilt, shame, failure, loss, and they feel that they cannot face people, they cannot achieve what they are looking for. Now, these are general population, like you and me, normal people. Now, these people, if they have contemplated suicide, they should be actually talking openly. Like, for example, in our youth fellowships, in our groups. Yesterday I seriously considered suicide. Why are we not talking? Because the moment we say that, our entire body language changes, our entire response system is entirely different, where we put people down, look down upon them, and particularly as being less spiritual, as being less Christ-like. Now, have spiritual people in the Bible contemplated suicide, quote unquote? Did they? They may not have used the term suicide, but did they think about ending their life? Elijah, for example, says it's better for me to die. How many times godly people have felt as if they've come to the end of their life, there is no hope? Now, remember, this is a very important truth that we need to pick up if we are in the business of helping, saying that have normal conversations about these things, because normal people are thinking in day-to-day circumstances. All right? So suicide is a desperate cry for help. 10 to 16% attempt at some point in their lives. Attempt. When I was doing my MBA back in 1981-83 in Andhra University, Vizag, I went through difficult time. I didn't attempt, but definitely as I was sitting on the beach of Vizag, I did think if I could just walk into the sea and vanish. It is a thought, it is an ideation. I did go through those moments. But thankfully, by that time, I did accept Christ. I was walking with the Lord, and the Lord helped me. But as a child of God, as a believer, did I go have that idea? I did have that idea. But I believe the Spirit of God sustained me and brought me out of it. 10 to 16% attempt at some point in their life. And this is a research that was done by Anthony Joseph Raj, right? So suicide causes, right? One, many of you have said psychache, unbearable psychological pain. Yes, Schneidman emphasizes that and says that we can bear physical pain, but psychological pain is unbearable. Now, what do we mean by this? We read a number of cases, instances, where youngsters are having live-in relationships. Gone are the days when people look down on something like this. It has become a mainstay among elite universities and institutions where children soon after their even intermediate go to different other places, cities, and pursue their studies, and definitely at postgraduate level. And there are a number of ways these students are able to earn and become independent. And they have part-time jobs, part-time courses, and they have live-in relationships. Now, many of these live-in relationships have become toxic. Many jump into these relationships because one of the main reasons, and I've had the opportunity to hear real life stories, is because the family life is not happy. Parents have not created a good family atmosphere. There is nobody to care for one another in the family. There is divorce, there is domestic violence, there is all sorts of things that's going on. And so they are desperately seeking for love, affection, sense of belonging, as we will see in live-in relationships. Saying, well, marriage at home didn't work, let us not get married, but have good relationship. But many of these relationships turn toxic. Recently, we have even seen gory murders happening. Now, because they take such decisions which turn wrong, some of them even go on to commit suicide. So you can see that this mental pain is one of the main reasons for attempting suicide. Two important wishes: wish to live, wish to die, are there inherent in each one of us. The wish to die part is absolutely dominant. Wish to live is a default setting. We have a strong urge to survive. There's no doubt about it. Whether you take it theologically, sociologically, or in any which way, you want to live. However, when your mechanism to live, your ability to live runs its course, and you're no longer able to live, and your wish to die enters in. All that you have tried, when you see it's a waste, the wish to die comes in. When you lose meaning and purpose, as some of you said, when you see no hope for future, as many of you said, when you feel worthless as nobody cares and values you, right? The desire to live, what for? No love, no acceptance, no celebration, no appreciation. Why should I live? What for? Wish to die takes over. So therefore, how can we create an environment where people begin to sense a meaning and purpose desire to live, and never allow that emotion, that thought to end life surface. It could be due to severe illness, psychological and physical. Many times we see depression, right? A lot of people get depressed, a lot of people become alcoholic or addicted to many things, and then finally commit suicide because even the addictions are not helping them. It is ruining their lives and ruining everything that they're doing. It is, it's pushing them to die. Poverty, debt, alcoholism, addictions, family rejection, all these things are causes, right? So another thing is that if you see these, research has shown that more often male, older, single, living alone, suffering from insomnia, had poor memories, were neglectful of themselves, all these could lead to suicide. Lower suicide rates during war. It's a very interesting fact that, the aggression within, the pain and anger within was diverted to a common enemy, the enemy which was fighting this country. So especially in the World War, England, there were less suicide because the whole country, the population of the country was fighting the enemy. So there were less suicides. Closer human relations brings down isolation. So there was a more coming together to fight a common enemy. Coming to very practical and very personal reasons is Aaron Beck. He says people get into depression, people lose hope, the desire to live because of the cognitive triad. And all of you have put your finger on it, and that is helplessness. In other words, either nobody is interested to help me, or whatever people do or say is helping me, and nobody can change it. I'm totally helpless. Whether it is to improve my academics, whether it is to improve my relationship, whether it is to improve myself, nothing is going to change me. I'm helpless. I cannot help myself. Then hopelessness. I can't see anything bright in my future. It is only going down. I'm going down a vicious cycle. So there is no hope, right? I want to die. I can't live one day more. And then thirdly, worthlessness. Nobody values me. I am a toilet paper. I'm used and thrown away. I am absolutely dispensable. I'm treated with absolute indignity. Nobody wants me. Nobody would want me. And therefore, I'm worthless. So I'm a burden. I'm a burden to everyone. Now, this cognitive triad, when they come together particularly, is a potent combination that can push a person towards suicide. So watch out if you or anybody is experiencing these things. I'm not necessarily saying you would attempt or they would attempt, but it is surely pushing a person over the edge. More practically, if these are psychological cognitive triad, more practically, these are some of the things that you will notice. Slowly, it's either sleeplessness or excessive sleep. They've withdrawn, who were otherwise social, chirpy, cheerful, they're suddenly withdrawn, excessively sleeping. It could be a sign of quote unquote depression. Loss of appetite. A young person losing appetite for no reason is a very, very clear sign of depression. Neglecting personal hygiene. When a person, especially young people who want to appear good, take care of themselves to be likable, and suddenly they're neglecting and don't care, this probably that's another indicator. They're inquiring about suicide. Sudden and drastic changes, dropping grades, absenteeism, not being seen, not taking part in any activities, and substance abuse. These are some of the clear indicators of symptoms of what is going on that could lead to suicide. Signs of possible suicide: withdrawn, more of them, feeling isolated, uprooted, is worthless, feeling worthless, helpless, and hopeless, has developed sudden eating or sleeping disorder, has lost interest in everything, is going through a broken relationship, bereavement, loss, financial loss, is tidying up his or her affairs, returning things, writing apology notes, remembering something far away in the past, giving away prized possessions, talks repeatedly about taking his or her own life, has definite ideas as to how to commit suicide, has attempted before, has a family history of suicide. All these could be possible signs that we must take note and address them in as sensitive, caring as manner as possible, right? So what do we do as interventions, as counselors, right? A very important thing, especially to address the cognitive triad, when a person is feeling hopeless, helpless, and worthless. Cognitive behavior therapy, helps tremendously, because it all begins in the mind. As the Bible says in the book of Proverbs, as a man thinks, so he is. Our thoughts determine our feelings. One of you have made a comment in the Slido survey. You said, "Do feelings matter? Do feelings matter? Why are you getting emotional?" Is a phrase sometimes we euphemistically say that. But at the end of the day, whether you eat an ice cream or buy a great dress or eat biryani as in Hyderabad, attend a great worship service, look at the bottom of all this is emotion. You enjoy, you relish, you celebrate, you high five to your friend, give a big hug, and kiss your loved ones. It's emotion. At the end of the day, what you are wanting is emotion. And God does not undermine emotion. He is all about emotions. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. So in cognitive behavior therapy, or as we'll see, rational emotive behavior therapy, the simple rule is this: change your irrational belief, replace it with a realistic, truthful, and honest belief. You will change the way you feel. For example, nobody cares for me is a sweeping, generalized, hopeless statement, which is not true. If you go and ask X number of your friends or family or whatever, do you really care about me? Yes, some people will say, I don't care. But there is at least one or two people who will say, What are you talking about? I pray for you every day. Maybe a response that you will get. What are you talking about? What can I do for you? I'm there for you. Maybe somebody will turn around and say, we can encourage these people to test their false beliefs, irrational thoughts. For example, somebody who looks beautiful may say, well, I'm looking so fat. Now, that's not true. You and I know. But the person perceives like that and say, okay, what is your definition of being fat? Shall we talk to medical experts? Shall we talk to some of your friends? What is the reality? What is the truth? So how can I change my markers in life so that I do not set unrealistic, irrational markers to live by, but loosen up a bit and allow people to accept you as you are and celebrate you. So basically, in cognitive behavior therapy, we somehow get into wrong belief systems and end up thinking less of ourselves, thinking that life is a mess, life is terrible, when it is not true. So, for example, when youngsters come and complaining to their parents, well, I don't have anything in life. And what do parents say? Immediately turn around and say, when we were your age, we did not have enough clothes. And your whole closet is overflowing with the branded clothes. What are you talking about? So we are not addressing their issue at their level. We are addressing their issue in our past. They're two different things. It won't work, right? So how do we help them to see things in a new perspective, offering them a new perspective and a new light, new way of looking at things, and helping them to test their reality as they believe and what it is actually is in life, right? For example, Elijah, he thought, I wish I could die. And why did he feel like that? Immediately after a great victory of, killing so many priests of Baal, he is feeling like this. He was victorious, successful, and suddenly he feels like this. And why? Because now he was thinking he is the only one left, and he was zealous, and it was too much for him. No, it is not true. God said, relax. That is an irrational thought. The rational thought is, I have reserved 700 priests who have not, 7,000 people who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So God had to bring reality into his life. So not everybody hates me. Maybe one or two people. They're important, right? Not everybody. So cognitive behavior, some people mostly are hurt by their thoughts. Now, usually it is boys and men, although they have feelings, they have emotions, they don't express it, they're always talking in terms of thoughts. But there are particularly girls and women who are more about emotions. So there we have rational emotive behavior therapy. We combine emotions as well and address their issues in terms of enabling them to feel, recognize, acknowledge their negative emotions for what they are, and help them to work on their emotions. Go back why they feel what they feel, and look at their thoughts, rational thoughts, irrational thoughts, and enable them to change their behavior, right? So the first one is emphasizing on wrong beliefs. The second one focuses more on emotions, but nevertheless going back to thoughts and helping them to change their behavior. And for people who feel that there's no meaning in life, nothing makes sense, such people will gain a lot through what is called as logotherapy. Some of you may have heard about Viktor Frankl, a Swiss psychiatrist, a Jewish Swiss psychiatrist, who was also part of the Jews who were sent to Auschwitz concentration camps. People there were dying like flies because they were sick. They had no food. They had no clothes in extreme winter, no dignity. They were shamed, and everybody was dying. In the midst of such meaningless existence, Viktor Frankl came up with this idea and said, these German soldiers can take every bit of dignity from me that is outside. They can humiliate me. They can take away my clothes. They can take away my food. They can take away everything, but they cannot take away my thoughts. And so he said, I'm going to think about my family. I'm going to believe that I'm going to survive this concentration camp. I will be joined with my wife and children. I will visualize how I'm going to enjoy with my family in my front yard, in my lawn, swinging with the children in the swing. And he imagined and kept a picture. He had a purpose to join back with the family. He visualized it. He had that logos in front of him. And he said, I'm going to live. So much so that his spirits were lifted up and he survived. He not only survived, but while at concentration camp in the Auschwitz, he could even share his own food with others and enable people, some of them even to survive. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that if people can find meaning and purpose, circumstances would not matter. Today, we live, especially youngsters, are living in an entitled society. What is an entitled society? What is an entitlement syndrome? I deserve everything good. And even before children ask, mom and dad give the best to them. They don't have to work for it. All that they say is, we will give you everything that you ask for, just get us marks. And so they become very entitled. And the entitlement is actually reducing the resilience of survival, resilience to face negative life situations, a sense of losing one mark, a sense of somebody ignoring me, a sense of somebody not recognizing me. I'm entitled, I feel entitled, and I demand everything. When I don't get it, I just get shattered. So people must hold on to something higher than themselves, to be able to reach out with compassion, to say life is outside of myself when I reach out to others. When I entertain and have these pictures of life purpose, then I will be able to take on setback, difficult circumstances, failures, losses in my stride. Otherwise, what sustained Joseph through the imprisonment, through the slavery? What sustained him? The dream that God gave him. The dream that God gave, that sustained him. Why do our youngsters not nurse a dream, nurture a dream? How can they have a purpose? Logotherapy is a fantastic thing. When we don't compare with others, have our own life purposes and life goals, it can sustain us even through difficult circumstances. Can the church offer a response to cognitive triad? I believe so. We need to translate God is there, Christ is there for you, Christ will do it for you. Two, Christ in me, a part of the church, will do it for you. So, can I offer help? Whether it is in academics, whether it is in relationships, whether it is in family issues, how can church be available and offer practical and real help in addition to prayer, in addition to scripture? How can I become that Christ with skin on and offer help? How can I offer hope? What is it that I can do? Many times people, when they come for counseling, they just share their story and they say, thank you. I feel so much better. Thank you for a new perspective that you have given me. I think this will work. I never thought about it. Hope. When there is new light, there is new hope. And the new light is nothing but a new perspective, new way of looking at things, new way of doing things, which a person emotionally bogged down may never had opportunity to think about. But you dispassionately looking from outside offer a new perspective. And I believe here, celebration of every life in the church is so important. How do we overcome the, how should I say, the societal discriminations of, say, color, social rejection based on color, social acceptance based on color, social recognition based on success, social rejection and acceptance based on the standards of the world? How do we overcome? Do we have a new way of relating to people in the church, in the community? Then we will be able to offer, extend that worth, and people will feel worthwhile, value in such relationships. I believe today it is these things that matter, because there was a time when we talked about food, clothing, and shelter. No, people are quite rich today, especially the middle class, and they have many of the material things. And we moved what was US in 70s and 80s after the hippie movement, when it was prosperous. Now the depression was so rampant, and today we are going through the same phase. We have everything and more, and it is only exasperated by the internet, because we are so bogged down with what to expect based on the things that are happening across the world, not just locally.